Okay, we are fortunate to have Peter Ellyard speaking next. He's addressed a lot of the large companies. He's addressed Telstra, more recently RMIT too. So we are quite privileged to have him here speaking to us in this capacity. Now, Peter Ellyard is a futurist. He's a professional futurist. That's what he does for a job. That's his profession. He goes around speaking to people specifically about futurism and taking their scenarios and finding out ways that they can move into the future more ethically and more sustainably. Peter Ellyard has written a book. It's called Designing 2050, and here it is. If you've seen it before, I think it's out via the Cameron O'Reilly's publishing company. The TPN network. That's the podcast network. At Borders, it's at Borders. There we go. So Peter Ellyard is going to be speaking on Designing 2050 is the name of the talk. So what I'll do is I'll hand you over to Peter. Hands together.
Thank you. Now, you've had two hard days, and you probably need... You're going to have an unbridled passion, pile of optimism now. But as I said, that's what I do. I get people to uplift and think about creating heroic and glorious futures for themselves and others. And I get paid to do it. So my market is appreciative enough to actually pay me to do this. I teach it, I write books, that's what I do. Now, I've been working on the year 2050. Now, I don't expect to be here in the year 2050. I'm actually 74 years old. Okay? That's how old I am now. Okay? And, all right, and so I don't know how long I've got, but that doesn't really matter. I teach, I write books, I work with young people about helping have fruitful and productive careers. But I'm interested in the year 2050. Now, in a previous life, I actually was one of the five original people who wrote the first draft of the Framework Convention on Climate Change at the Rio Earth Summit. So I've had a long history in some of these issues, including writing the first original Framework Convention. And I'm very interested in the year 2050 because we're having now a global conversation about that year. How much do we need to get global greenhouse gases down to have a climate-safe world in 2050? I think we all want one, don't we? Absolutely. Now, once we start thinking, now that's 2 generations hence. We are actually now, for the first time in human history, having a conversation around the entire planet about something that ought to happen in 2 generations' time. That has never happened in human history before. This is actually something to celebrate. Now, we haven't succeeded in putting it all off yet. But you know one thing? We will keep on doing it until we fix it. And there's a very simple reason for that, because the win-lose scenarios are no longer an option. We either all win or we all lose. Yep. Now, that's the fundamental shift that's occurred. We are now in a world where we have to construct environments, solutions, technologies and processes so we all win around the planet. Okay? And there's another thing that's beginning to shift here too, and I write about this in my book, I'm going to talk about it a bit more, is the birth of a new paradigm I call planetism. Now, planetism is like nationalism, except it's first allegiance to planet rather than nation. How many of you would say you're already planetists? Put your hands up. Okay, you're already committed planetists, even though you've heard the word perhaps for the first time right now. Because that's the only thing that matters. So the question then is, what do we have to do and create? What new industries do we have to launch? What new products and service innovations do we need to create to have a planet by the year 2050 that's prosperous, sustainable, harmonious and just? I say we're getting opinions from the floor already. I'm in my 4th sentence. I'm getting opinions from all of you. This is the important point about this is that we're all participants in creating this, because we all want to make damn sure that our grandchildren inherit a planet which is something like that. Now, the good news is we're actually halfway there, even though we don't know it. Now, I'm going to explain how that occurred. So I'm going to go back to about I'm going back a couple of hundred years to start with. I'm going to go through to the year 2050. So I'm going to tell you a bit of a narrative now, a story. The story of what's happening on the planet. This is how futurists work. We try to pick a generic story, put all the bits together to create a scenario. Right now, there are three processes which are working to create a global society. Now, Marshall McLuhan created the concept of a global village back in 1958. Quite a well-known phrase. Today, we're actually inventing one, aren't we? Now, it's interesting because there are three big processes which are created. One's called globalisation. You're all pretty familiar with that. It's about interconnectedness. It's not about economies. It's about the desire to relate. And increasingly with things like the internet, which is the third one, which is the technological delivery systems, plus the desire of humans to actually relate. So we can create products and services and do things together across time zones, across even cultural and linguistic barriers. Globalisation and technological interconnectedness are creating that. Today, about 30% of all the products and services created on the planet cross one national boundary between the time when they're created and when they are actually consumed, quote unquote. That's going up about 5% per decade. Okay, so every 10 years or so, we're getting more integrated with more, 5% more, and it's probably going to speed up. It'll probably go up 10% per decade. That's my own touch, but it's currently about 5 to 6%. Now, there are two of them. The other thing that's happening is there's a third force, which I call tribalisation, which is a bit less understood, but very important. Have you noticed the world is breaking into smaller bits? The old Soviet Union is now 15 separate countries. Azerbaijan, Lithuania, so on. That's the old Russian Empire. The old Serbian Empire, Yugoslavia, is now 7. With Kosovo and Montenegro becoming independent in just the last 3 years. Kosovo just right in the last year, right? That's the Serbian Empire. To our north, we have the Javanese Empire called Indonesia. East Timor has become, quote, free. Aceh and West Papua would like to become free. And the only thing that's stopping it from becoming, quote, free is military power of the Indonesian state. The Han Empire, which is China, about 60% of all Chinese, the people of China are Han, the rest are all the others, the Szechuanese and the Uyghurs and the Tibetans and the Mongolians, the Manchurians, you name them. Now, Tibet wants to become free. The Uyghurs want to become free. Now, let's look at Tibet and the Uyghur Republic, which is called East Turkestan, or we look at East Timor. Which side is global public opinion on? Always on the side of the people who want us to see. No exceptions. No one's on the side of the Chinese or the Serbs or the Russians, are they? We've all made up our minds. The breaking up and getting freedom is good. But the important thing is something else is happening, because you take Lithuania, which broke off from Russia just after the fall of the Berlin Wall and became free. It was dependent on the Russian economy. It became independent and celebrated its Lithuanianness for about the first time in about 80 years. But 2 years ago, it joined Europe. And what it did, we went from dependence to independence to interdependence. And the interdependent relationship is the most fundamental shift that's happened in the history of the last 20 years, in my view. The interdependent relationship is all about like two people committing themselves in a love relationship. Two independent people coming together and giving up some of their independence because of the benefit that comes from union. Yep. Now that's Lithuania joining Europe. That's two people getting married. That's supply chains. That's a loyalty scheme from Qantas. I fly Qantas because they give me something back that the Virgin Blue doesn't. And keeping loyalty and locking people to interdependence is the story of the 21st century. You know something about interdependence? Women do it better than men. And one of the reasons women are thriving is because they do interdependence better than men. But educated men do it pretty well too, but they have to go to university before they learn how. There's a level of maturity education to do that. Now, so the three are creating today a planetary society. Tribalisation, globalisation, technological interconnectedness are creating this extraordinary thing of a global village. and it's booming, is it not? Today, about 1.6 billion people have entered the educated middle classes of the planet. The educated middle classes of China plus India alone is incredible. There's 500 million of them now, and the two countries are adding to their educated middle class population the population of Australia annually, about 20 odd million. Educated middle class people, whether they're Argentinian, Chinese or Australian, usually want 2 kids, they want them to go to university, they believe in democracy, that's a problem for the Chinese, and they believe in a clean, green environment. Educated middle class people are pretty much the same. And you know something? They account for nearly 90% of the total purchasing power of the planet. So they are shaping global markets, and their values are shaping global markets. So let's get inside the educated middle class people created by globalisation and see what they believe in. But before I do that, I'm going to go on to just remember some of the other histories which has happened. For the last, up till about 1970, we're dominated by a process called modernity. Remember, modernism, modernity, a la mode, modern, and went with the rise of modernity around the world, which basically said the rest of the world should look like Western Europe and North America. And we, quote, modernised the world. Every airport became the same. You know, modernity was good. It was accompanied by another major belief system called progress. Go back 10 years, or maybe 15 years. Every town in Australia and around the world had a thing called a Progress Association. Remember those? All gone today. All gone. And the change occurred around 1970. It was paraphrased by Joni Mitchell in her song Big Yellow Taxi. She talked about paving paradise and putting up a parking lot. Remember that? And my father's generation says, you can't stop progress. Progress is innately good. More of it, the better. But Joni Mitchell said, progress is not good. So we switched from modernism to what we call postmodernism. Postmodernity is around today. And some funny things happened when we became postmodern. We actually had to change the meaning of words because our values had shifted. What we used to call swamps became wetlands. What we call slums became heritage precincts. Right? And that's a shift from the modernity to the postmodern world. And postmodernism is very, very interesting because it's all about the value of old things having value. Because what said, anything old is out. You know, progress meant everything out is bad, everything new is good. So we did some most despicable things, like draining swamps and knocking down heritage buildings, amongst others, in the name of, quote, progress. Today, postmodernity says it's different. Old things have value. So let's talk about postmodernity, just one particular example. I'll give you many, but you go to your doctor. The doctor says, this is what's wrong with you. Here's your script. Go to the chemist and get it filled. But you say, well, I will do that, doctor, but I just might check out the Ayurvedic doctor or the Chinese herbal medicine person or the shiatsu master or the yoga teacher or the you know. We all know the whole cultures of the world have whole diversities of healing arts and sciences. And what we do as postmodern people is we might take our pill from the chemist, but we also might enrol for a yoga class or go and have a shiatsu massage or have some acupuncture to complement it, right? That's classical postmodern behaviour. We said old things are now rich, so we customise a personal solution. A personal postmodern solution means we customise the best of the old or the best of the new. That's classical postmodernity. Now, postmodernity was a reaction to modernity, when everything new was good and we made the whole world like Western Europe. But it's not a paradigm of itself. It's just a reaction to the past. So in my work, I've actually given the name planetism to the one it's just about to replace and is already... I've just asked you whether you're planetist, and you all said yes. So let's talk about what planetism is all. It's about 9 values. 9 value shifts, which are... Now, here I have 100 slides. Oh, no, I'm going to go back there. That's right. Look at that slide. I'll read it to you. No man is an island entire of itself. 1620. Every man is part of a continent, part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less as much as the promontory were. As much as the estate of my friends of thine own were. Any man's death diminishes me because I'm involved in mankind, that therefore never sent to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. When John Donne John Donne was to me in 1622 actually, I think it was. To me, he was the world's first planetist. Now, we all think this way. When we give money for the Pakistani floods or the Aceh tsunami, or we give people to the bushfires, we now feel obligated. I don't know how you felt about the bushfires, but if I actually did give money for the bushfires, I would have felt terrible. I felt a duty. I didn't know a single person, but I actually found two I did afterwards. But most of us, we give money away because we think it's good, even though we don't personally know the people. This is a level of altruism and generosity that was inconceivable in modern times. But it's now characteristic of our planetary culture. We are all involved in mankind today. And this involvement in mankind has many complex things. Gathering to fight, we're gathering in to fight Islamic terrorism. So we share fights, we do good things together, and we have these big celebrations. Now, tribalism and globalism are creating a whole new set of genres itself. Think about world music. World music is tribal music, which celebrates difference of culture, but we do it in the context of celebrating the unity of humanity simultaneously, do we not? Now, this is an astonishing period because these complex shifts are occurring. Now, planetism has 9 value shifts, and it comes from one of the other analyses that I did was that the word Spaceship Earth was created by Buckminster Fuller and Kenneth Boulding back in the late 60s. And Kenneth Boulding talked about Spaceship Earth. He said, what we need to do is to transform ourselves from the cowboy to the spaceship economy. He actually didn't go to those meetings, but I spent the last 20 years trying to describe exactly what's involved, and I'm going to share some of that with you now. It's in my books. What's involved in creating, quote, the spaceship economy, because that photograph of the planet from Apollo 8, of the beautiful blue and white Earth hanging in the blackness of space, with that lifeless moonscape in the foreground, was a seminal moment, easily to me the most important photograph of the whole of the 20th century. It changed our consciousness about ourselves. We saw a place which was small, a spaceship, which was vulnerable and alone, the only home we have. And what implied from that is we can't afford to be cowboys anymore, which is the phrase developed by which he went out on their range and conquered land and threw stuff away, threw rubbish away, and throw it away. That away is actually somebody else's home or some other species' home. But now we actually live on a spaceship, and we're actually all cosmonauts. And we have to, what's happening today is we're actually learning to reinvent ourselves to be cosmonauts worthy of living in Spaceship Earth. And it's got a long way in my writings about what's actually happening here. And that change in behaviour is producing all sorts of things. For example, and we are looking at our conflicts now. For example, let's take the climate change conference in Copenhagen, which we all felt was a failure. Because we knew, because they couldn't get agreement, we all are losing, yes? We all are losing. That's a ubiquitous feeling we have. And the important point about that feeling is that what we have to agree on. Kenneth Boulding had another friend whose name was Garrett Hardin, who wrote an essay called The Tragedy of the Commons. And he said the biggest dialogue of the 21st century, and this typifies Copenhagen, but also the World Trade Organization, getting rid of nuclear arms. The big challenge we have to face is what forms of mutual coercion can we mutually agree upon? We all have to give up some of our self-indulgent individual lifestyles because we all live in a community on the planet. And we have to change our behaviour so we either can all win or otherwise we'll all lose. Now that's an ubiquitous part of today. It's everywhere and the consciousness is there, and I'm just, by asking you questions, I'm reminding you that I'm not saying anything is strange to you, am I? I'm just reaffirming in you things that you already know and maybe giving a few words to it, but I'm actually not saying anything which is actually reveals something profound to you. You actually know from your own understanding of the world around you, because you're educated middle-class people, that this is true. Okay, let's go on to planetism. see, I create lots of slides. Okay. I've just talked about that. 9 value shifts, there we are. I'm going to go through them one at a time, but they're all important. The top ones are from individualism to communitarianism. Now, individualism says that when rights are in conflict between individual and community, individuals win. And that's the traditional system that those people of the English-speaking world have. Individual rights are paramount. But the important point is communitarianism says if when rights are in conflict, the community must win. That's actually Singapore, if you like, a good example of that. And Singapore says that's very autocratic. But Lee Kuan Yew went to Los Angeles about 4 years ago and gave this speech on, quote, human rights, the Singapore perspective. And they all thought they were going to have a great time. But he just said one sentence and he sat down, asked them to think about it. He says, you know something, I can walk through a park at 3 o'clock in the morning safely in Singapore. Can you do that in Los Angeles? He sat down. So communities can be safe. We have to limit the rights of individuals. Big discovery. The Americans have a lot to learn about that because they can't give up their guns. They're still massacring people. We all know, because we are being communitarianised by the fact that we have gun laws. We take guns away from a lot of angry gun owners because we need to have safe communities. Or we take the rights to smoke away from individual smokers because we have the right to clean air. So we are already limiting individual rights for the community. I'll just give you 2 illustration examples of that. I'll give you hundreds of others around insurance, about business investment. I could give you lots of others. But the important point is that we are all being communitarianised today slowly because we are all members of Spaceship Earth. And we all are slowly giving up rights. And a conversation like the Copenhagen Convention or the future of world trade or the issue of nuclear arms and all that, what forms of mutual coercion can we mutually agree upon? Yep. Okay. From independence to interdependence. I talked about, the dependent child, the independent adolescent, and the interdependent adult. We all know the best kind of relationship is the long-term interdependent ones. It's hard to manage. And boys, as I said, are not as good about that as girls. But we all are trying. We actually know that's the best long-term relationship is the interdependent one where we give up some of our independence because the benefit of the country union. Whether that's a political union or a supply chain connection or a relationship with loyalty relationship with Qantas or a personal relationship does not matter. The principles of interdependence are the same. And there are 3 questions you ask when you ask a question about forming an independent relationship. Most people don't ask these questions and they get into trouble. But this is my suggestion, the 3 questions you start. And is the other honest? Is the other reliable? And is the other competent? And if the answer is yes, trust will follow and interdependence will be formed. And that's how businesses doing due diligence today do. Now, independence to interdependence. Autocracy to democracy. George Bush. Now, I don't agree with much of George Bush said, but he said something which was true. He said, at the end of the Second World War, there were just 10 fully fledged democracies on the planet. There's now 130. Some of them not so fully fledged, but all trying to be. I recently did some work with the Australian Electoral Commission on the future of elections. And we were talking about the fact that I have one of my bottom lines is success goes to those who get to the future first. And we got to the future first on democracy. We just had a change in government and a bit of a crisis over. And, no shots were fired. The opposition lost and they said, well, we lost, too bad, we'll try again next time. That's pretty damn good. Not a shot fired. That can't happen in a lot of places on the world, but we did it here right recently 2 weeks ago. That's something to celebrate too. And you know something? What's in short supply all around is free and fair elections. So the Australian Electoral Commission now are forming a new company called Democracy Australia, and they're going to export free and fair elections to the planet. That's the 21st century industry. Yeah? Big one. A big one. Everyone wants it. Okay. Humanity against nature, humanity against nature is the old paradigm, drain the swamp, blah, blah. pollute the sky. You know, progress was all about having as many smoking chimneys as you can afford. Remember those photographs? Progress was 25 billowing smokestacks. That's only 25 years ago. Now, how different the world is today. And the point about that is that, but you see, humanity part of nature, that's the indigenous, that's the pre-modern view. It's now the post-modern planetist view as well. We've actually taken something from indigenous people to say we are now part of nature. We can't be separate from nature. And that nature is contained within a space capsule. They're the metaphors we need to use to reinvent and create 21st century economies and societies, which I'll tell you how we're going to do that in a minute. Production, consumption, lifestyle, unsustainable, sustainable. This is a big issue. Sustainability is a huge issue. I've written a lot of work on this. A lot of major work is on environment issues and sustainability. But there are a series of design rules for ecological sustainability, which I'll give you a few. The first one is this. You want to design a sustainable world for 2050, first rule, we have to learn to live within perpetual solar income. Now, the income we receive from the sun every day is 10,000 times more than all the energy we could conceivably use. We're just terrible at finding ways to usefully use it. So, the person who finds ways to do that just might become a 21st century billionaire, yeah? Okay? The second one is this. We have to learn to turn waste into food. In nature, there's no such thing as waste. The excrement of one animal is the food for another. So we need to find ways of creating waste, turning waste into food. Industrial food, not only human food, but industrial food. Recycling everything. Because the spaceship doesn't have any more receptacles. The third one is this, zero net collateral damage. One of my definitions of sustainability is we don't do collateral damage. Now that's a defence expression. It came up, for example, it meant that a bomb was meant to be dropped on a terrorist hideout and actually knocked the school next door. We call that collateral damage, a euphemistic word for the bomb hit the wrong place. But collateral damage is a very useful concept. Let me talk about, and it's about sustainability, because let's take about medicine. A person with cancer gets chemotherapy, lots of collateral damage to the body to treat the cancer. But the new forms of enzyme and genetic manipulation technology are finding ways to take out the cancer and leave the rest of the body completely untouched. That's sustainable medicine. In agriculture, we put the pesticide on the crop. It kills the bugs we meant to kill, it kills the bugs we didn't mean to kill, it kills the fish and swans in the river, and sometimes the person of the plane putting on the poison. But with new gene technology and biological control systems, we can create sustainable agriculture with zero collateral damage. We kill the pest we want to kill and nothing else has changed. And we actually now we can define individualism differently. What are individual rights in a communitarian way? Individual behaviour that does not create collateral damage to others is okay. Okay? You might like to think about that. If we do no collateral damage to the society or to the planet or to other people, that's sustainable. So we're actually reinventing what we mean by individualism. We're not taking away, we're just limiting it, some of the more exuberant things. So you can't take your four-wheel drive over a sand dune anymore. Or through a swamp. Okay? And the important point about that, and that's the traditional saying. So there are some of the rules. And to do that, I'm going to introduce another concept here, which is very fundamental to my work, which I call ways and wheres. We have to create new products and services for democracy and for turning waste into food. And I use the concept of ways and wheres, which are the innovations of the 21st century which have yet to be invented. But you know, we need innovations to turn waste into food for democracy, do we not? Ways are the changes to behaviours, and wheres are the changes to designs and technologies. So a water conservation way would be shortening your shower from 6 to 3 minutes. A water conservation where would be a new volume shower head. And together they create water conservation. Now I have a language for describing the 21st century economy, because we're talking about all the jobs that need to be done to create this planet of ours by 2050. We need more of these, don't we? You know something? Jobs for everybody here. No shortage of jobs. This idea that we're going to have no work is bullshit. I'm giving everyone a lot of worthy work to do. And the global society, the people will turn waste into food, are going to become billionaires. I'm promising you that. Okay? Ways and wheres. Patriarchy to gender equality. Well, there's still a few patriarchs around, but they get very bad global press from the educated middle class, don't they? Because one of the reasons we're actually in Afghanistan is because of the Taliban did to women. Let's be blunt. It's actually causing, we're spending billions of dollars there, and the terrorism that goes with their treatment of women. This is a good story. This is actually a positive story. And we all agree that these things have to be done. No ifs and buts, they have to do them. This idea that we have to pull out of Afghanistan is dangerous, because people say, well, it's their war. That's gone. As John Donne said, we are all involved in mankind, and therefore never said to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee. We are all involved in mankind now. No ifs and buts. There are some jobs we have to do, even when they're nasty ones, because we have to keep a safe spaceship Earth. So, patriarchy and gender equality, that's the whole... Now, intercultural intolerance and hostility to intercultural tolerance and harmony. Now, there's a lot of people around the world who are pretty hostile to each other. But again, they get bad press. They have a war, but they don't have wars like they used to go on Italy. They actually have a short war which ends in a negotiation. And having wars these days, more often it's about, the statistics are very clear about this, about getting yourself set up for a subsequent negotiation, where the real decisions are made. Okay? So the important point about all of that is that to be intolerant and hostile is bad, to seek tolerance and seeking harmony is good. So we could have intercultural tolerance ways and wares and harmony ways and wares. Conflict resolution and mediation, 21st century giant. Okay? We all have to find, and I did a lot of work with some orders of nuns some years ago. And you know, you look around the world at all the religions causing all these damn wars. And I've also worked with some Islamic groups too. And I've been trying to persuade, I haven't succeeded. I've got the nuns on side, but not the Sufis I was trying to talk about. They said, well, can you imagine when Islam and Catholicism in a place like Ambon, where they've been chopping each other for years, what if the nuns had, an order of nuns was a peace-building, conflict resolution arm, and the branch of Islam had one too? They would talk together and bring their people together. So that's the whole issue of conflict resolution and mediation, and the ways and ways to do that, another 21st century industry. Okay? And confrontation negotiation. Down the bottom we have defence and security. I've done a lot of work with the defence sector. I keep on telling them they're a bunch of cowboys, because they're over on that side, right? If you might remember, that's George W. Bush and that's Barack Obama. Yeah? By and large? Okay. We don't have a defence. You know, in the old days, not long ago, we had yellow hordes and red perils, didn't we? Now, we don't have that problem anymore. It's gone away. We have a new one. The Jacuzzi triads putting heroin into our kids in Sydney, downtown Sydney and Melbourne. We don't have a defence problem. We have a security problem. So the issue of security ways and wares is another huge 21st century industry. I could go, in my book, I've created scenarios for these things, but I'm quickly talking about the nature of the 21st century economy, all the jobs to be done by the people who want jobs, plenty of work to be done. The interesting thing is the global market will want them. Recently, I was working with a bunch of Dutch engineers. They've been building dikes for 500 years. You know something? Dike builders are in demand right now, are they not? For reasons which are pretty obvious. The sea's going up, we have all these floods, invested dike. They just got to the future first. Indeed, if you look at water, there are two groups of people who are world kings of water. One are the Dutch who have too much in the wrong places, one are the Israelis who don't have enough. The Israelis can make a molecule of water go further than any other people because they've got the ways and wares for water conservation par excellence. So you get to the future first, like in our democracy or Israeli water management, you have an export industry. Because the whole planet, and through the internet we have all of these things happening. So the nature of the 21st century economy is before you. Now, some of this will use all the sorts that you've been talking about. The cyber technology world, the biotechnology world, the nanotechnology world, and the new materials technology world will all create products for security, for negotiations, for sustainability. I could go on. So the technology, I'm now talking about the purposes of the 21st century economy and society. And the nature of that society is very clear. It wants more of those. So the nature of now the interesting thing is that people say, well, I've just written a paper for a big journal, future journal, on designing and building a sustainable society. Actually, you go to peterellyard.com, it's a 6,000 word essay, you can download the lot. Okay? But the important point about all of those things is that we could actually create We have now export models for these things and ways and wheres for them. And the nature of the 21st century economy is all about delivering the things we want to create a prosperous, sustainable, harmonious and just society by 2050. So my book was called Designing 2050. And I'm talking about the nature of the 21st century society, and you would agree, we're already halfway there, are we not? We've got a way to go, but all I've done is give you language and painted a bit of a story, which you actually, or now I put it in those words, you're all very familiar with it. It's his story, it's my story, it's your story. So what I'm talking about is how we create a 21st century economy and how we can bring artificial intelligence and all the things you'd be talking about here. And nanotechnology and biotech. I have a PhD in biochemistry. That's what my original training was in. I've done a lot of work on the nature of biochemical futures and creating a biotechnological world. And the point about is the role of biotechnology and nanotechnology as part of this are huge. I mean, I could give lots of examples for turning waste to food and living in solar income. I could give you, but what I'm talking about is you don't talk about the technologies. This technology will boom. What I talk about is the purpose. I've actually portrayed all the products and services that we need to invent and market on the world today, right? And I've just given you the scenario of how the people, the values of the educated middle class, who cover 90% of the global demand, are setting this agenda, and hopefully they understand that through this they can create a planet which is safe and harmonious for all. Big job to be done. 40 years, a very exciting, interesting ride, but it's quite doable. And to do that, we have to take a couple of other mindsets too. I do a lot of work on leadership and management, and one of the important shifts we have to make is going from future taker to future maker. The way I put it is, the perfect person of the world today will be a resilient future taker and a purposeful future maker. Now, my leadership and management stuff is big. I can quickly go back to it. I'll just show it's there, but you can get this. I'll leave this with Adam, and Adam can put it on the web page if you like. You can all download it. Oops, there it is, too far. Yeah. That's the leader, the manager. The manager, we're all manager and all leader. Okay, we're both. The manager is the change taker, future taker, path taker person. And the leader part of us is the maker version of the same thing. Okay? And that's the difference between the manager part of us. We're all leader and all manager. And the important point about that is, down the bottom, we talk about the problem. I won't talk about this. I'll talk about this one first. Each of us is part the prophet, what will be, yeah, and part the visionary, what should or could be. Do we have both of those in our life? Both of them. Now, in overmanaged and underled, Australia's an overmanaged and underled country. Do you agree with that? We have too many future takers and prophets saying, this is going to happen. We're going to get run over. This is going to happen. The question is, do we want it to happen? Do we want the singularity to happen? If I ask the question, is the singularity inevitable? Make your hands go up. If I ask the question, is the singularity desirable? How many hands will stay up? How many think it's desirable? How many think it's not desirable? Oh, this is an interesting audience. Because I've asked that question to other people, I get a different answer. But the important point about that is, you can ask, George Bernard Shaw said, some people see things as they are and ask why. I see things as they could be and ask why not. Okay? And that's the prophet, and that's the problem. The leader, that's the problem. The manager part of it is the probable future, what will be. And the leader is the preferred future. Now, I want you to think, imagine you're in a sailboat. I only have about 5 more minutes, okay? I want you to imagine a sailboat in a 3-knot tide and a 7-knot wind. The tide is the metaphor taking us to the future. We do nothing. We leave the sail down, we leave our hands off the tiller, we're going to go take you where the tide takes you. You know something about tides? They never take you to paradise. Do they? On the rocks. You wouldn't get in a sailboat to go where the tide takes you. That's a piece of nonsense. The tide is part of the environment in which you work. You get in the sailboat for a purpose. And if it was to win a race, what you would do is you get on those who are sailors would know this. You get on the windward side of the fleet, you pick up the wind shift first, you win by getting to the future first. That's what you do. Okay? There's one problem with all of us sailors, however. We all have the genes of cave dwellers. When we evolved as humanity, change was rare and change was always awful. To Paleolithic humanity, change meant floods, famine, pestilence, wars and natural disasters. So we developed a flight and fight system to prepare for change. We must never forget the biological inheritance of humanity is to fear change. Not a very useful set of genes to have in the world of the 21st century. And the important point about that is that now you're in that boat going to windward. Wind shifts come and go, yep. Some of those wind shifts will be opportunities and some will be threats, yes? But any wind shift will be perceived to be an ill wind shift to a sailor who has no course. If you don't know where you want to go, you'll see every change as a threat. Our biological inheritance tells us that. We fear change. People change behaviour for only two pairs of reasons. They're both emotional twin pairs. One is the pair of fear and hope. The other pair is love and hate. If I fear for something or hope for something or hate somebody or something or love something, I will change. Think about, vision leads to hope. Hope leads to inspiration. Inspiration leads to commitment to change. Think about committing yourself to somebody you love. It's got nothing to do with the head. The heart and the gonads come to mind. But the head comes in afterwards and says, how do I get that girl? This wonderful thing from the neck up, it springs to life and creates the most marvellous scenarios driven by the engine room, which is neck down. Now, leaders understand this, and that's what, and their preferred futures and probable futures. Now, down the bottom have problem-centred, mission-directed strategists. I'll still talk about this, and then I'm going to stop. Everyone talks about being a great problem solver. Do you know something? Being a great problem solver, I think, is a national curse. Why? If you fix every problem on the planet, every one of them, you created a future which is merely less awful. Not wonderful, not magnificent, not heroic. To create one of those futures, you have to imagine one first. Yes? Imagination is the critical thing about creating futures. And the leader part of us, the future-making part of us, imagine the future and says, why not? And so that's the problem set. The mission-directed strategist is the leader that has a preferred future. This is where I'd like to go. What's in the mission to get there? What are the new initiatives I need to take? What's the obstacles I need to remove? What's the improvements I need to make? What's the heritage I have to keep and treasure? And what's the baggage I have to throw out? In my books and my writing have all this. You can get it off my web pages, so I don't have to go into it. It's on this slideshow. I'll leave this with Adam, and anybody can download it. Adam, would you put it? Where's Adam? No. Would you put this on the web page? On the web? Okay. You put the whole slideshow on the website. You can just download it. Okay. And it covers a lot of the stuff I've talked about, but a whole lot of stuff I haven't got to talk about. So I'm going to wrap this up now. You notice I've hardly mentioned technology at all. But underneath technology has been a delivery system for a whole lot of these things, and markets too. My bottom line is this: we cannot work to create a future which we do not first imagine. My second point is those who don't live in the future today will live in the past tomorrow. And my mantra, which is from Ralph Waldo Emerson, he said this beautifully, never been better said, I think. Do not follow where the path may lead, go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. Thank you. But you got the full gallop version there. How much time do we have, Adam? Time to go home?
There's nobody telling us to get out. So. Would you be happy to answer some questions?
Oh, sure, of course.
Is there anybody who has any questions?
I don't want to keep these people. They're sat here starting for a couple of days. I probably want to go home to their family.
Or to the pub.
This talk to me personally was the most interesting. The reason why is you and I are on the same page. We've written books.
I'm on it.
What you call planetist, I call globist.
Okay.
But my book is not selling at all.
We'll
my question-
exchange cards afterwards. We'll
Yes,
trade
of
trade
course.
secrets.
Of
You know,
course.
I'm lucky enough. Just a couple of days ago, I gave a speech and sold 150 copies of my book at the back of the room, which I had the pleasure of sitting down and signing them all. I can because I do a lot of public speaking to work with corporations. I make my book available, and it usually sells. So I drive my own sales to a large extent. But the book, I'm also well enough known in the marketplace now. When people look at futures, I put my name up, all my stuff comes up. My book is not selling super fast either, but these books never sell much at all.
That's not the issue for me. What I'm curious about is, do you see yourself as like an intellectual crying in the wilderness, or do you feel it's already, you're part of a movement? Because my feeling is, there's no movement. Like,
Well, I think these people just
this
been
issue
here.
of,
Do you feel that
creating a planetary state should be one of the main topics under discussion in a community like this.
Well, I
But it's
ask
not
these
an
people,
issue.
do you feel
It's not-
that
it's
you
just not
feel that
discussed.
you and I are part of the same movement? Who feels that?
I want to throw a down in this representative, so we have some boxing in the name.
But do you sense there really is a
Absolutely. I mean, I've been in the futures game for quite a long time. I set up the Commission for the Future with Barry Jones and Philip Adams. I was the CEO of that in 1988, okay? And futurism was not around. When I finished that job, I became a full-time futurist.
not futurism, globism, or what you call planetism?
Well, planetism, I actually avoid words. I avoid globalism because it has too many other contexts to it. Globism also too. That's at least an original word. You see, finding the right word is really important. So I never talk about healthcare because healthcare is actually about the health industry, not the health industry. So I talk about illness and wellness. I talk very carefully about language, and I try to pick language that doesn't have baggage. Now, globalism is a perfectly good word. But you listen to any people talking about the planet. All conversations with people, the planet's in danger. They don't say the globe's in danger. You see, what I try to pick language which is closer to common usage, but just a little different, so there's not a big shift required for people to pick up the concept of planetism. Because we say, I'm just going around the planet, you know. That's a common word now. It wasn't 15 years ago, because globalisation, we could actually call planetisation too. I actually think it is that. But planetisation is the forming of the value systems I've been talking about. Globalisation is the process of connectedness. And one is more profound than the other, to me. So that was a comment. Do you have another question? No? No?
Questions. Everybody's tired. All right, it's Sunday. Okay. I guess I'd ask, how do we change the system where essentially our corporations are configured to be sociopaths?
Well, this morning, that's a good question. Is that the whole question, or will you give us some more? Well, it's interesting. Remember I talked about the curse of the MBA this morning? You were here when I talked about that? I actually think the three things which have killed great leadership have been the public opinion poll, which drives every politician, and a subset, the focus group, we just had a good example, okay? The cost-benefit analysis, which says all sorts of things which were done heroically before we invented don't get done anymore, okay? And the MBA, which puts all this together and trains people, and you can't even get a job running the corporate sector unless you have a top MBA. And MBA turnout managers are not leaders, there are process managers, and you know something is encouraged, they talk about vision, but they have no toolkit in vision at all. So I'm a visiting professor at the Curtin University Business School. And I work with MBAs, and I work with PhDs in that school. I was at the Business School at the University of Queensland before that. And I work with MBAs all the time, and I'm trying to actually get them to actually think about, I actually talk about business management. They talk about management, they never talk about leadership. And that's future making. Management is about resilient future taking. Leadership is about purposeful future making and inspiring and motivating people to do that. See, my language is very carefully constructed, so I use the word management. Everyone talks about management leadership, but To my knowledge, I'm one of the few people that has a model, which I've carefully crafted, which says we're all part manager of self and part leader of self and other. And the kind of images we have, one's as to what will be, and one's to what should be, and so on. I've talked about all, and the differences are clear. So my model actually takes the familiar language that people's around and tries to tweak it in ways which gives it a difference. So that's what I try to do in my work. Oh, I'm sorry, up here, sorry.
Well, actually, I thought we'd nearly run out of questions because I wanted to do something in case everybody forgets it. And that is congratulate Adam and thank him very much for putting this whole event on. I think it's been quite amazing.
Very courageous of him. I don't know how much we have. Any more questions before we all go home?
One over here.
Up the back there.
Hi, I'm Asma. I'd like to see a more permanent,
Louder.
I'd like to see a more permanent institute that encompasses all this.
I'm trouble hearing you.
I'd like a more permanent institute
Okay.
that encompasses all this.
Okay. It's not a question for me, it's a statement for Adam.
Okay, well, I've spoken to the Singularity Institute, and their focus is on developing friendly AI. Now, there is other organisations which are overseas, but they're also global in a network sort of way. It's also, there's the Foresight Institute, there's the Lifeboat Foundation, and there's also IEET, which is well worth a look at. But it would be great to get something local. And I agree with you, actually. It would be excellent to get everybody's details who's interested in that and follow this idea up. If it's feasible, maybe everybody can write their email down and I can sort of collaborate all those. Also, I do have a lot of people's email in like the Eventbrite, but I don't know how many of you are really like which ones are interested in this idea or not. So I might be spamming everybody if I just
Why not spam us once? And
okay, I'll spam you once and then will do. Yes, will do. Okay, great idea. Thanks, Asper. Okay, great. All right. Well, I'd just like to, first of all, I'd like to thank Dan because he's been here for 2 nights in a row. These guys aren't getting paid by us, so I mean, they've been doing it for free, and I mean, on a moment's notice. So Dan and Colin from RMIT AV have done a fantastic job. So that's really good. I'm very glad about that. It's also Ben's been avidly videoing too, so we've got 2 angles. That's been really good. Look, there's been a lot of speakers at the conference, and I'd just like to give a big thank you to all of them for putting in the time and the effort that's been required to prepare a very good quality talks and to share with us and bestow their views and their knowledge on and their expertise on such a wide variety of topics. And it's been really interesting for me to sit here and listen to it all. It's been great. And also, it's been really good to have the audience having such excellent questions and being very great participants in this Singularity Summit. It's been fantastic. So put your hands together for the speakers, as well as the other participants, and that's the audience. And that's you.
yes.
Okay, well, and once again, thank you very much. It was a fantastic talk, Peter. It was great to have you here, and I hope to have you next time if we have another one, and I'm hoping we do. So, in closing, I'd just like to thank you all for being here and making this possible. And it's been a very special experience for me, and I'm happy to share it for all of you. Thanks. Bye.